Streaming. Start streaming. Peace and love, kings, queens, and gods. It is your guy, the Floating Yogi. And you already know what it is. It's Floating Yogi's Book Club. We about to get into it. And brought to you by Yogi, Urban Yogic Wellness and Education, where we are restructuring health and wellness in the community, one healthy habit at a time. So as I always say, come on in, invite a friend. Matter of fact, invite about 10, because it's about to go in. The story has been getting juicy, it's been getting saucy and spicy. So if you want to be part of the growth gang, if you want to be part of the Zoom room where we can chat, chop it up, and if you have some questions, comments, something that strikes you, then say it, as opposed to waiting until we're like 30 minutes after we get started. And how can you do that? Let me just hit you right here. Boom, that pinned comment that you can see. You can slide on that link, uedc.com, and it will send you to a website. You can sign up, create an account, and all the services are there for you. Click on the calendar, and whichever one you're looking for Midday Mind Right or Floating Yogi's Book Club or other services that we have available, I encourage you to check it out. In courses and stuff. With that being said, some of the people who help me be me, help me do what I do. We got my dude Brent. He's part of the crew too. These saucy intros and stuff that you've seen, or ads and digital assets, as they call them in the biz, you can hit him up and maybe he can provide something just as saucy or maybe a little bit better for you. I encourage you to see what's up. Also, we have my guy Payoga, DJ Tony from Payoga Universe. It's a dimension where people are our greatest resource, and that's exactly what he is. And I encourage you to figure out how he could be a resource to you. Check in with him on the daily meditation accountability. Check in with him on the daily prayer. Matter of fact, let him tell you about the daily meditation and the daily meditation movement. Talk to him.
So if you ever felt like you an alien just a little bit, that's kind of me. And that's why I decided to create my own universe. I realized after I became self-employed and started rejecting money from people I didn't like, that it's not hard to create your own world. If you're self-employed anyway. I mean, I know if you gotta go to work, you got co-workers and whatnot, but I realized that I don't deal with people I don't like. I literally live in my own world, in my own universe, with my own money and my own time. So I have the pleasure and privilege of using all of my energy to love the people I want to, and part of those people is you. Every morning I get up, I go live, and I say I love you. There are so many people in the world who just need love, and I think that I was born to love them. So I go online, I say I love you. We take 5 breaths, and then I do a quick 1-minute prayer. That's it. Every day, that's how we roll. Then I hop on over to UE.DC and click on the Movement Meditator button, join the growth gang, get a shout out the next day because I'm not bullshitting on my greatness, and you shouldn't be either.
Come on, that's nothing but facts right there. I'm telling you now. Also, we got Lifeform, fantastic mats for you to get those on mat lessons, and then come to places like this, spaces like Midday Mind Right, to bring those on mat lessons that we learn into our day-to-day life, in these healthy habits that we're doing. So, we've been reading how yoga works, and the joint is saucy. Girl's traveling from India to Tibet. She gets arrested. She's got this book. You stole the book. No, I didn't. My teacher gave it to me. Who's your teacher? They're dead. Where are you going? I don't know the teacher's name. Okay, you're under arrest. So now she's got to teach people she's got to teach the captain of the jail yoga so he can fix his back. And she can prove that she didn't steal this, and they can let her out of jail. and it's been getting saucy. It's been getting super saucy. She finally started healing the captain's back and then checking his ego. Ooh, ooh, that's the power right there. Welcome, welcome, my lifestyle. Welcome, daughters of God. Hey, I'm with that. All right, so, oh, that's fantastic. My daughter has confiscated my bookmark before she left. So, we had cleanliness next to godliness. Where we at now? 2 invitations. Number 25.
Sorry, I probably should have let you know that. I was sitting here thinking to myself, I don't use bookmarks. What do I use? And then I opened up my book and I was just like, oh yeah, I use a pencil. And I was like, oh, that's not gonna help him. She can steal that too. And then I just waited for you to find it.
My volume good, y'all?
Get on my end.
Alright, cool.
I'll check the live streams out for you.
Oh, why? 2 invitations. 3rd week of August. I was still feeling rather stunned by the captain's invitation. Oh yeah, the captain invited her to dinner. Yeah. I was still feeling rather stunned by the captain's invitation. Full 3 days later, when the corporal came to the bars of my cell and handed me through a package wrapped in white cotton cloth over tied with a string, the way a man would do it. Captain says, let me see. He said to say it just so and make me call it practice. Captain says, okay. Captain says you can wear this on Friday evening, but only if you really want to. Then the corporal blushes like a big boy and turned and went to the side room and hid while I think. So the captain, a little uncomfortable and dropping off a little package so she could look nice and presentable for dinner, even though she's a prisoner. I'm gonna keep going. I stopped in the other back corner, the one without the hole. With my back in front of the jail, which was my version of privacy, I set the little package on my knees and worked carefully at the knots. String, you see, like all those normal things you take for granted, is something important and valuable to a prisoner. Time, on the other hand, is not. And so I carefully undid all the knots and carefully soothed out all the string. Before I even looked inside the package, it was an extraordinary piece of pale sky blue silk, in the kind that an Indian woman would wrap around her on a holiday, along with one of those beautiful matching tops. That evening, after dark, I tried the whole thing on. It fit perfectly. It was not new, but it was very clean, and I felt the care for it and the goodness of the woman whose dress it had been. And as much as I understood how extra things can distract us from our higher selves, it felt good and right to be dressed in something fresh and beautiful. For going to the captain's home, it felt to me like something important was going to happen there, and it deserved this special kind of cleanliness. You know, that saucha, that cleanliness, that third niyama. All right. He had said to be ready by dusk on the appointment day. I dressed after doing my own daily yoga session just before dawn, because the darkness was the last truly private moment I had every day. Then I wrapped my old rag dress around the other for the rest of the day despite the heat. I washed as well as I could with a cup of water in the afternoon, and then just waited around, well, nervously. And for some reason, both the sergeant and the corporal were standing around for hours too, looking as nervous as little boys. I could even feel Basuku being nervous in the next cell. I tried to sing the master's short book in my head, like I do whatever I have to pass the time like that, but I kept drifting off even before the end of the first chapter. At what time I figured it was just about the moment before I went into the back corner and got out a little dish with the last bit of Sergeant's ointment on it. My wounds were almost completely healed, and with the scars there were seeming to fade. But the sandalwood scent of the oil always lingered. And then he was there, dressed in a fresh white tunic with his red captain's sash, and we went out to the surreal aura, to the second room on the side. It had a small, low desk with several mats around it, a thick, dust-covered ledger stacked against the wall. The corporal stood around nervously near the door, while the sergeant rummaged through the ledgers and finally pulled one out. And then the captain said, "I want this done by the letter, Sergeant." And the sergeant looked up at him, and then over at me, but with his face so free of any unclean feeling that it struck me like a fresh smell of blue silk around me. And then he nodded and turned to an open page and made an entry noting that a prisoner was being escorted from the jail by the captain on official business. And the captain signed his name, and the corporal came and presented his thumb in some ink, pressed his thumb in some ink, and made the mark that was his signature as an official witness. The captain stood up very straight and looked at his two men very sincerely and said, "I am taking my teacher, Miss Friday, to my home because," and there was a long pause, "because I want to tell her." He paused again and looked into the sergeant's eyes. "Tell her about what happened before. I think it will help all of us. And the jail, it just doesn't feel like the place to say these things. Is it clear? Do you both see?" he asked. And they nodded as one, and they were gone. The captain and I, out the front door, across the porch, to the path, to the road itself. But there, I paused and glanced behind us, and the captain smiled and said, "You are welcome to bring him too." And I ran back to the porch where the sergeant and the corporal were standing, still gazing off like children left alone at home. The corporal was down the steps and back behind the building before I could say anything, and brought my little lion on the rope and handed him over to me without a word. People were out to walk in the evening cool. People were out to walk in the evening cool and to buy their vegetables for dinner. Okay, I wasn't crazy. A good number greeted the captain formally on the road and stepped aside to stare at long life at me. But all three of us were enjoying the air and the walk too much to notice them. His house was a beautiful little whitewashed bungalow standing by itself at the end of the road, through some lovely green pastures. He showed me briefly around. It was simple. A small living room with a fireplace for cooking, and a tiny pantry off to the side. A pretty little room for bathing and a toilet, and a quiet bedroom with lots of windows facing green hills on the side of Rewind. A pretty little room for bathing and a toilet, and a quiet bedroom with lots of windows facing a green hill on one side and a small valley on the other. He cooked and washed in silence, enjoying the nightfall, and feeling of my little precious one on his lap again. The captain knew that what he was doing with the food, and it told me a lot about his upbringing. Subtle turns of spices, extra little stops along the way to let the savor set in. A well-off family at least, but something else there too. He was a man who should have a fine wife and children and 2 or 3 servants doing all of his cooking. But he had obviously chosen to live like this. I was intrigued. Peculiar. Maybe she's right. Maybe she's wrong. Maybe my mouth is parched.
Well, I'm not going to doubt her. She's his teacher. I imagine she's, very observant in correct ways most of the time.
You know,
She's our hero.
the protagonist.
Yeah, that's the word, smart dude.
She can do it. She can do it. If she can't do it, well, she's screwed.
It's like doubting Sherlock. Like, when he says, based on deductive reasoning, yada, 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 you believe him. And yeah, you're right. He's not right all the time.
Yeah.
House is wrong. Right. A lot of people don't like to accept that.
Yeah.
Dr. House is wrong a lot more than he's right usually like once an episode. One big time at the end.
Yeah. But
Maybe
he
one
be
time
wrong
at the-
like 2-3 times.
Exactly. He'd be like, test for everything. Or drug her with this. And it's not, yeah. But
Oh
anyway,
my gosh, yeah. House is a
Girl
good
is
one.
17, right?
Yeah, 17. That's crazy.
So,
Is that your daughter?
You said so what?
no, I just said she's going through a lot, man.
Yeah.
Like,
She's living a whole life, yo, at 17. That's an experience. Alright. But there I paused and glanced behind us, and the captain smiled and said, "Oh, I already read that part." Bitty 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 boo. Okay.
Here we go, on to the page.
Yep. We ate then too in silence together. It was not only that we really had only the one thing, the yoga, in common with each other, but it felt as well that each of us was collecting our thoughts so we could speak of something of importance when the time came. And then it did. And he poured us a cup of wonderful sweet spiced tea and set everything else neatly on the side and sat before me with an earnest look. "There are things we need to speak of," he began, and there was no need to say more of it. We both knew. "I'll be frank with you," he said. "There are things I need to ask. I will go straight to the matter. We cannot stay too long." I nodded, happy with my little line and the prospect of important words. "You have fixed my back," he said, looking into my eyes with gratitude. "And if nothing else were said between us tonight, I would tell you how grateful I am. To be honest, I have simply expected to live with it that way or worse as I gotten older. And now not only has the pain gone, but I feel somehow younger, somehow lighter than I have in many years, not only physically, but here as well," as he laid his hand over his heart. I nodded again sincerely to thank him for his thanks. Gratitude, too, is one of the most powerful ways to free the middle channel. And then he looked out the back door, out over a beautiful little covered porch for a long silent while. Then he came back to me, and his face set in a long time sadness. "But you see, there's something very obvious I need to ask about this yoga. Perhaps it is so obvious that people forget to ask it, I think." I nodded and felt what was coming. His instincts really were so pure. "You see, I know you have fixed my back and part of my heart with the yoga, but I cannot stop thinking about what it really means in the long run. I mean, let's face it. Let's be honest. In the end, really, it doesn't matter so much that my back is better. I mean, you know it, and I know it. I'll just keep getting older anyway, no matter how the yoga poses may help in their way to delay it or help me make the best of what I have left as I grow older and older. But sooner or later, something else will get hurt. Sooner or later, something else will fail. Sooner or later, no matter how much energy the yoga gives me, my total level of energy will drop. Is dropping, even as we speak, year by year. And then one day, you and I both know it. And no matter how disciplined or determined I may be, well, one day I will stop the yoga because I just won't be able to physically do it anymore. And then I'll die, as all of us must die. And I'm not sure then what doing the yoga will have meant to me. It almost seems as though it would have been, you see, almost fruitless by the end, you see. And he paused and looked at the ground and knew he wanted to say something more, to tell me something. It's not that I'm not grateful, you see, he said finally, almost apologizing, almost an apology. But there are reasons why I asked this thing. There are reasons, good reasons, reasons I cannot escape for asking you about these things. And with that, finally he stood and he went into the mantelpiece over the fireplace and brought down the folder made with lacquered wooden covers. He opened it and handed it to me. Inside there was a single piece of yellow paper, a drawing, a portrait. It was a girl with long, beautiful black hair and eyes curving gracefully up like the eyes of a Tibetan woman. Like very much like I realized my own eyes. And then something began to dawn on me and looked up at him suddenly. I did not want to marry you see, he began. Oh, I did not want to marry, you see, he began, his voice choked with emotion, and then it poured out of him. I wanted to stay with Uncle, you see. He was everything to me. We lived further north of here. You see, the hills began beneath the mountains that connect our people's lands to your people's lands to ours, the Himalayas. And Uncle, you see, he was different. You had to walk a long way across the face of the highest of the hills just to reach the house. His little hut, his stone hut. And you see, he was there and lived there alone. So he could do his yoga, you see, like you. And he did it the old way, like you were showing me, you see. Not just the poses by themselves, but with the sitting silently and with the master's short book, you see, the very same book. And he began to show me things like you do, with the breathing and the focus, and even began to teach me the letters of the mother tongue of Sanskrit, you see, and that is how I could read just the cover of your book, you see. And that is how I understand, how I feel what you say when you say it. But Father, you see, but Father, you see, and the sadness grew deeper in his face. Father was afraid. Father was so proud of me, so proud to have a son at last, and so afraid when he saw how close I was growing to Uncle who it seemed did nothing with his life. Although even then, you see, I felt that it was only Uncle who was not doing nothing with his life. Dun dun dun, the bigger picture is hidden. He paused, remembering almost unaware any longer of my presence. He looked into his tea and sipped it without thinking and went on. So father, you see, he arranged a marriage as early as he could. And we married. And then, to make sure, he sent us away to the capital. He found me a job in the court, you see, in the king's court, you see. And those were the days of trouble. And those were the days of opportunity, you see. It was just 3 years after the old king had died. And there had been a little terrible struggle afterwards. And some noblemen had taken power, you see, done something to the queen mother, and to the crown prince and the other prince, you see, killed them or sent them off into slavery, some say, in the western lands. But the year father sent me to the court was the beginning of the new realm, you see. The younger prince, who had escaped, he returned with a strong army and his father's old allies, and they put him back on the throne. But they couldn't stay nearby forever. And it was a difficult time for the new king, you see. And he needed good people, new people. And my father, he got me in. That sounds crappy time. I'm not trying to be there. I'm not, and I wasn't even in the city. I didn't even like grow up in the city. And then you gonna force me to marry and then go to the city in the middle of like a civil war, a usurp. That's kind of selfish, sir.
This guy is so cynical and self-centered.
I was thinking this was going to go a whole different way, but, you know, I am interested to see how this connects and why it's important for her to know. Like, is he trying to marry her? What happened? Is it his niece? Is it his nephew? I mean, is it his, like, nephew's son? I mean, niece. Blagdasted. Daughter. Blagdasted. Alright. Let us see. He got me into the ministry. You see, the ministry of justice. And I could read, I could write, you see, the local language, and I worked hard. And within the year, the superintendent, you see, the same one who is the superintendent now, the one in charge of us, he noticed me and he brought me up close to him. And he was close to the new king, you see, because he had been very close to the old one. They had studied together, some of the things the uncle studied, and even with the same teachers. And that is how I was able to come to the capital and begin my rise at court. And she was beautiful, as you can see. And she was good. And she respected the deeper things, you see. The things that Uncle had taught me to care about. And we set up our home in the capital there, you see. And it was a beautiful home. A home of simplicity and grace and hope. And near the end of that first year, we conceived a child, you see. And all of our hopes, they were being filled there before our very eyes. Maybe it's his daughter. He stopped abruptly and looked down quickly at the floor, and his face suddenly twisted into itself and tears sprang down his cheek. And when it came time for the child to be born, well, she labored, she fought, she screamed, she bled to give it life. But in the end, at the end, it was born. A girl. She was born. Born dead. And in the effort to give her that birth of death, it killed her too, you see. And I was left alone with two dead bodies in that beautiful home of hope. And he stayed there weeping without moving for a long time. And Long Life felt it too, the way he does feel things deeply. And he got up out of my lap and went and put his head on the captain's knee. And without thinking, the captain stroked his fur. And in a while, he was able to go on. And that was when I began to drink, you see, because it hurt so much and nothing meant anything to me anymore. And at first I would come to work late, and then I began to miss days, more and more days, because it felt like really there was not lots of reasons to get up out of bed in the morning. And then I finally began to drink in the daytime too, even in the morning. And I came to the office like that. And the superintendent, he tried. He really did. He was close to Uncle in a way of thinking, and such a generous man anyway. And he cajoled and covered and finally pushed me however he could to get it out of me. But it was hopeless. And he and the young king, you see, they were still enemies. Still have enemies even now. In the court, in the ministry, people who would like any excuse to be rid of him. So in the end, he had no choice, and he sent me here to this godforsaken little town on this border, and I have no idea why this one in particular, except that it was so forgotten by everyone that whatever mistakes I made while I was drinking myself to death would go unnoticed. And Ravi was here, the sergeant, and he was a good man. Is still a good man. And those were good. And those were the good days, you see. At the beginning, Ravi took me in and got me excited about cleaning up the gangs and hoodlums that were terrorizing the lives of the people in this town all day long. And clean up we did. Those swords and pikes on the walls and stations, they were not always rusted and dusty, you see. We fought hard and we drank hard. And here we stopped again and stared sadly at the floor. And Ravi, you see, he didn't drink before I came, you see. He was a good man, a family man, and a good officer. And then it was me. You see, it was me who started him drinking. First for fun to celebrate the thrill of danger and our victories, and then later for boredom, and then later on for sheer pain he was in because of... And here the captain stopped cold and wouldn't allow himself to go on with it. We were silent again, and he was rubbing Long Life's ears absent-mindedly. And then, when that last thing happened, you see, I stopped. I had to stop, knowing I had been the cause of it all. But he couldn't, because the pain was always there, right in front of him, and he still stops from time to time. But then the pain comes back. But then the pain comes back on him hard for some reason, and he starts again. And even then, you see, he stopped dead again. He looked me hard in the eyes. Even then, you see, even if our dreams came true, even if all the silent sitting and seeing myself taking away his pain and his drinking, even if it worked, you see, even if it came true, and even if giving him the most precious thing I have left in my life could really happen, even if somehow he became captain, Well, you see, even then, I'm not sure deep inside what it would all mean. That it would mean, what it would mean, you see. And he placed his hand sadly on his what? On his wife's likeness. If it all has to fall apart again anyway. If a sober, successful sergeant or captain has to go through the degradation and humiliation and travesty of that gradual fall into old age and weakness, and the loss of it all we hold dear, and then death itself, regardless of whether we did yoga or not, what did it mean? He pleaded, what does it mean? My instincts told me to stay silent. There was still something in there in him to come. And again, he lifted his eyes past me and stared out the door, past the porch, onto the dark. Then they came back to mine, strong and clear now. I said I wanted to speak honestly and speak openly with you, and I have. But there is one more thing, he said with a powerful kind of strength. You see, Uncle, when I was young, just a boy really, he didn't just teach me the beginning of yoga poses and some exercises with the breath and focus and letters and that. Sometimes when we were sitting there like this in the evening, alone over a warm cup of tea, his root tea, you see, then he would look out into the dark of the sky and stretched over the plains beneath us, all over the Mother India before us, you see. He would talk about wonderful things about, and the captain paused a bit, seeming almost embarrassed, about, you see, people who had learned all of the yoga, the deeper yoga, the yoga of Master Shortbook. And Uncle said, you see, he said that if you have a good teacher, you really tried with all your heart, and then you could go to heaven, you see. I mean, what they always talk about, it could really happen to you, to anybody at all, no matter what your age, whether you're man, woman, rich, poor, successful or not, you could really one day meet angels, beautiful, holy creatures, and you could learn to be with them, learn to stay with them. And you would even yourself change one day like them. Made of pure light, passing through every realm of living things, man or beast, constantly helping them, constantly nurturing them like your own children, and then one day make them like you, angelic, indestructible light, perfect love, spreading to every living creature in need, and curing them. And I was young then, young too, and I bore the curse with you. And I bore the curse of youth. I had health, I had strength, I had not seen death and tragedy. I was sure I was immune to them in any event. And I simply didn't hear what he was saying. But the seed, the seed was planted. Then a vision of what could be, a vision of what the word yoga really means, a union with the things divine. And the seed stayed within me, all that time. And then when you came to me and you looked so much like her, or perhaps our daughter, and exactly the age she would have been, but either way like an angel. The way I know an angel would look at me like them. And then when we opened the Master's book and you read that line about how we think things will last when they never do, well, in that moment, the seed broke open in me. You see, that hope came in me, hope for the things that Uncle spoke about. Because he said, too, that when the angels came as we began to reach them, as we began to become them, then all the ones we love too, all the ones that we've ever loved and ever will love, you see, he said they come. He said they all come. He said they come and we are together, and that this was real yoga. This was the real reason for every part of yoga, whether it was a yoga pose or the breathing or the focus or the sitting. And all I can ask you tonight here is it possible? Can it really work that way? Can we go beyond death in old age like this? Is that a way to heaven? Is there a heaven? Can we meet angels? Are there angels? Can we become like them? Light and pure love? Can we learn to make others that way too? And will we all be in the end together like that? Do you know these things? Can you? And then his voice broke into a sob, and his head came down nearly to the floor before me. Can you? Will you teach me? Teach me these things. A power came into me. A power like the power that Katrine had. And I put my hand on his head and held it there, softly, warmly, touching the seed in him, making the hope grow real. And I gave him silence so he could feel it and never forget it. And then I said softly, all the things your uncle said, all those things, they are true. The master too, he says, quote the sutra, and there will come a time when they invite you to take your place with them. He looked up, quiet now, and they looked down at him. You are invited, I said gently, with words that were not my own. And now the real work begins. Chapter 26, Flesh or Light.
Man, I thought he was gonna quit.
I didn't know what was going to happen, yo. I was like, is he gonna like force her to marry her? Is it like his long lost daughter? Is it like, what's going on here? And then no, I was forced to marry, had a child, and the child and mother passed in childbirth. Okay. And you would be my daughter's age, and I married a Tibetan woman, and you're from Tibet. Well, striking synchronicities. We can follow the signs, or we can avoid them completely. I'd go with option A. Listen when the universe whispers, so you ain't gotta feel it when it's screaming. Interesting. I wonder how this will change the relationship, because he said that it would.
Remember, she didn't actually die. Like, his wife didn't actually die.
That's not what it said?
It said it killed her too, you see. And it said, well,
Then he was left with two bodies.
it says the two dead bodies. I don't know.
Yeah, both of them was up out of there. So he's
Okay,
doing the
I'll
yoga
see.
You think he would have reworded that? Like, it killed the one of my... I don't know. Yeah, it was kind of worded weird.
Yeah, I was.
I get it.
It is what it is. But okay, all right. This is gonna be interesting. I still haven't read ahead, and I wanna see if this is gonna I know they're going to touch on a little bit more of the inner workings, self-reflective aspects of it, and making some connections. But I'm interested what flesh and or light is. It sounds like it's an option. It sounds like it's gonna be about what's the like brahmacharya, going in the direction of God or your higher purpose, or not squandering your sexual energy or desires, creative energy as well. Let me just do the things that feel good, chasing pleasures more so.
Oh, that's common.
Mm-hmm. What direction you want to go? You want to go downward? You want to go up? Pleasure's downward through the chakras. It's got a little bit more density to it. Dun dun dun. We're gonna find out about that in a little bit. I'm not gonna prompt y'all yet. Ooh, but that was a good. That was a. Whew. They were going to the drama this time. This is interesting. Let's see how it goes. Next, what else we got? Thursday, we got Midday Mind Right. 12 o'clock. We got some sound healing for y'all. We got some breath work for you. And I encourage you to come with any techniques that you've heard about. Let's get a quick chat before we get into it. We might incorporate some of them into the flow. Again, I like to thank Lifeform. I like to thank, things that are happening, yo. If you haven't already checked it out, check it out. We're going to Tulum in February. It's going to be fantastic, yo. That's all I have. It's going to be fantastic. Check out the link. Check out the website. We got photos. Super saucy. The link should share it. Should sell it for me. It'll do a better job than I can with my raspy voice right now, where my throat ain't getting undehydrated.
Hey yo.
Whatever.
I'd be down for some Vinyasa breathing on Thursday, or whichever one it is that it's like multiple of one and then only one of the other.
I know what you're talking about. I gotcha. You was like, yeah, I'm gonna put my request in early, so got you.
That's why I dropped the Zoom room.
I love it. See, these are the benefits of the Zoom room. So bring y'all asses to the Zoom room and let's make it do what it do. Then we can chat, we can rap, we can make things happen. With that being said, thank you Brent, thank you Payoga, thank you Lifeform, thank you Yogi, thank you Self, Growth Gang! Questions, comments, want to work on something, I encourage you to check out the website and become part of the Growth Gang. Peace and love, kings, queens, and gods.